Group play, particularly PvP group play in ESO, is very complicated. There's a lot of aspects to it, and so today, just to immediately come in and just let you know, this video right here is going to be very much glossing over most of the stuff that you're going to need to know. There's not that many people on YouTube even remotely talking about group play, let alone deep aspects of group play. There is a video out there by Malcolm that he does go over it a little bit, but he kind of just explains that, like, hey, some people run rush, some people do this, some people do that. He doesn't really explain how they're getting a lot of their combos in. He does explain their survivability with certain sets and all that. But with that being said, I'll be going over how each role is going to operate. I'll be explaining how these roles get the stats that they're looking for, and then finally how they all mash together and what you should be looking for when you run groups. With that being said, the first thing I'm going to talk about, and that's something that people really need to understand for PvP, because a lot of people want to play this role, and that's actually support. The first role we're talking about is support. The build that I'm on right now, this Warden, is a support tune. Now, support is very complicated, because support does whatever the team needs to do what they need to do. So if it's debuffs, you're looking for a support tune to do the debuffs. If it's a negate, that is support, because typically the negates aren't doing anything much outside of negating. It might provide some buffs here and there if they're healing, right? They're heal supports, or they might do a little bit of damage here and there. They may have Dark on, but typically when it boils down to it is if someone's playing support, right, they're providing either debuffs, buffs, negates, or other utility that the other roles cannot do. And it's very important to keep that in mind, because depending on how big or small your group is, depends on what sets that support tune is going to be running. Because a support tune can very much be running a heal set and an offensive set, like a traditional DPS set, and it'd be perfectly valid if your group is either small enough or big enough to support that. You have to keep that in mind. Support is very complex, so when you hear people say they play support, you have to be very particular about what type of support they're running. They have to basically explain their entire build to you if you're trying to set up a comp group, because just hearing support is not good enough. Support, typically when most people say they're playing support, means that they're just running a random assortment of gear that they don't know how to combo with, and it doesn't really do much, and then their build doesn't work. So they just call it support and say, well, I helped the team. It's like, you really, just because you have Darkon does not mean that you really help the team out that much. You're on a Bowblade Stam running Darkon, or you're running, you know, some weird amalgamation of sets, and it's like, how are you supposed to be doing this? I've seen people try to heal on DKs, which, by the way, DKs are not, they're not good at healing other people. You can say, like, well, you know, you can have the skills outside the class to heal. If every single one of your heals is a heal outside your class, that means that the class itself is not good at healing. This means that you have access to the general heals that everybody else gets in the game. And then that's on top of the fact that DKs have no ultimate for healing, and everything else going on with DKs that prevent them from being better heals or even decent heals. So at the end of the day, keep that in mind, because if you're seeing builds like that, you have to be able to say, you know what, alright, who I'm playing with right now, maybe for what we're trying to do, try not to incorporate them in the group, or try to change up their build. See if they're willing to do that, because that's a big part of group play. You're gonna have to be willing to change up your builds. So that's the first role explained right there. And again, I have to keep it somewhat vague, because I could talk about support for the next 20 minutes about all aspects of it, but because a lot of people are going to be watching this video because it's the first time they ever heard anything about group play, I'm gonna just leave it right here. The next role that's very simple is DPS. DPS is very simple. It is the people that are going to be getting the kills. Typically, what separates them from support tunes is that they're typically in 12-mans running Vicious Death and Plague. They're normally, it's like mandatory, you're going to be running Vicious Death or you're going to be running Plague, simply off the strength of you're going to be the ones getting the kills. By you getting the kills, you're probably going to have the most stats for damage, and by you having the most stats for damage, when Plague or Vicious Death goes off, you're now going to have an insane amount of burst coming in by you just getting that kill. You have to keep that in mind, because that's typically in 12-mans. Once it gets smaller and smaller groups, you don't have to do that. You could be in a 4-man where none of you have Vicious Death on, and that's perfectly valid. You can be in, you know, even I've seen 6 and 7 mans run around, and none of them have vicious death on. It just all depends on where you're running around in. Like if you're in Imperial City, none of you need a vicious death. I mean, right now it's Right Strake's event. You could definitely run it, but at the same time, if you have 8 people running around and you're all good, you don't have to run vicious death. It's still preferred because you can get easy kills from it by just getting a kill and killing the rest of the people around you. But at the end of the day, you're not forced by any means to actually run vicious death depending on how small your group is. With that being said, they are also the ones that are going to be running the least amount of buff sets in group. Typically, they are all selfish in nature. The only time that they're giving out any utility to the group would be if their back bar set is granting something. Like for instance, DPS can run Rallying Cry, but so can healers and supports. But if you're in a bigger group, typically either the DPS is not running Rallying Cry, or it's one DPS as Rallying Cry, and then maybe another DPS with Powerful Assault. The rest are running either Pariah, Clever Alchemist, or any other assortment of high weapon damage that they can get through a set. Typically it's going to be Clever or Pariah because, well, Pariah Heart I should say, because you can get a lot of weapon damage from it, and depending on how you're doing it, you either get heals from Pariah Heart, or you're getting even more health from Clever Alchemist. Typically I say just do Clever Alchemist because it's pretty simple to get used to it. The only thing that you need to do is, particularly if you're doing a lot of PvP and you're getting kills, which if you're running those builds you should be able to do something in groups. All you gotta do is go into Imperial City, go get some Telvar, and then there's an Apothecary Satchel where you can buy Columbine and other flowers that are very useful for making, for instance, Tri-Stat potions. You go ahead and do that. Either you craft the potions yourself, or you speak to somebody that can craft you those potions, and then boom, you have a whole bunch of Tri-Stat potions ready to go. All you got to do is go into Imperial City, kill some people, kill some ads, and boom, you got it. You ain't gotta worry about shit. At the end of the day though, DPS is very simple when it comes down to the role. The last thing I really have to say for them is they also run pull sets as well. DPS are typically the ones running pull. Again, you might see a support here and there running pull, but if people are running around and you see them pulling, they're typically the DPS, and that's what makes them bombers. So at the end of the day, that is the DPS role. Moving on to the heal section. Healers is the closest you will see to a tank in PvP for group play. If you see a legitimate tank in your group, he is not providing any benefits. And I bring this up in the heal section because what most people want to do when they're tank is they want to get a lot of pressure put on them, they don't want to die, and they want to help out their team. You can do that as a healer. You can't do that as a tank because you fail in the last aspect. Well, really two aspects. One, getting attention and holding it. If you're a tank, most people are going to ignore you, right? You're going to get some games where people will hit on you and you're going to be feeling real smart, real strong. Yeah, I got hit on it. Yeah, woo, alright, cool. Then the rest of the games, people ignore you, kill your teammates, and then they might come back and kill you because you're not actually that tanky. Or they may just leave you. Yeah, well, imagine you're just playing and you just saw your whole team get their ass beat and you're just sitting there like, well, my team dead. Well, are you a tank? Yeah. Well, they just left you because they don't have to kill you. Doesn't matter what the objective is, like, they can just leave you alone, kill your teammates, especially if it's deathmatch. Go up, kill your teammates, and then walk away. What are you going to do? You're going to force them to look at you? There's no set in the game that forces people to look at you. There is no, oh, well, he taunted me, so all my attacks go to him. No. You know, you could try running Vanguard's challenge if you wanted to make it where they do less damage to your teammates, but then you just made them do more damage to you. So all it really boils down to is kill you first. And when you do die, what's the point? You're taking 35% more damage. There's people out here that can make you take 50% more damage right then and there. Do you really want to be over here like, yeah, I'm taking damn near 100% more damage? They stun you because that's probably where most of your, you know, mitigation is going to be lying in, blocking. If you're not capable of blocking it, yeah, you're dead. So it's like, at the end of the day, tanks don't provide much utility in groups, if anything at all. And it's better for you just to be a healer because the moment you're a healer, not only can you take all that damage, but you're forcing people to look at you because you're the healer. You're stopping them from being able to kill the other players. So they might actually try to look at you. They may say, drop ultimates on healer. Okay, now that you're somewhat prepared because you know that people are going to be doing this to you, you're prepared to hit block, you're prepared to do this, you're prepared to do that, you're prepared to make sure that you're not only providing buffs to your team and making sure that you survive and you heal and you do this, you do that, but you're also stopping the enemies from doing what they're trying to do, from completing the objective that they're trying to do, whether it's kill people in deathmatch, or it's simply trying to take the flag from your team and you're all fighting on the flag. You stopping them from doing that. At the end of the day, that's what healers do. That's what healers are really great at. Like, particularly when you're running healers in PvP though for groups, they're normally running buff sets. Typically, they're running 1 to 3 buff sets. And I say 1 to 3 because they can run a monster set that buffs, they can run 2 5 pieces that provide some type of buff or utility. Whether it's getting ultimate, major minor courage, major force, whatever the case may be. For instance, a common setup that you might see somebody run for a warden healer will be sack seals with, say, rallying cry or transmutation. The reason why you might see something like that alongside Ozen's Inferno, which is a monster set, is sack seal, whenever they use their ultimate, grants major force. Wardens can get major heroism through shimmering shields, so they can already get ultimate back pretty quickly, coupled with a couple other things that they'd be running to get a lot of ultimate quickly, whether or not it's from group or from themselves. They can end up using certain ultimates like replenishing ward or enchanted thicket to get their ultimate back very, very quickly and then grant out the major force for a decent amount of time. The longest major force lasts with that ultimate, if you use 500, is 32 seconds. The lowest it can last, I think, is about like 5 seconds. So in the end, it's not too bad for getting it. It just, it all depends on, it all depends on what you're doing for your setup. Alongside, again, running trans or rally. Both of those are crit resistance, and then one of them gives out a little bit of weapon damage. Rallying Cry gives out weapon damage. Alongside Ozen Inferno, which then grants minor vitality when you heal a target. And also, if you overheal the target, they now get 4k armor. A setup like that is very, very strong for healers. Not only did you buff them defensively, but you also gave them offensive buffs, so that it couples all together to provide a very well-rounded, solid group buff build. And that's typically what most healers are doing, because all those buffs that he was providing also apply to them. It's just some of them may or may not be as more valid. For instance, the weapon damage, it helps in heals, so that's the only benefit that you get in it. Most healers don't have any type of damage coming in at all, outside of just hitting a lot of attacks and such. You don't have skills or running for damage because they are just trying to heal and provide as much buff as possible. Major force, they don't get any benefits from it again, but making it where they're tankier by running Rallying Cry, making it where they're tankier by Ozen Inferno, because minor vitality to heal better alongside the armor is very, very crucial, very, very beneficial. So those are the 3 roles all together, and a couple examples on how they're made. Right now, I'm going to explain how you're going to be coupling these roles together with certain classes. Certain classes are better than others when it comes to running certain roles. For instance, Sorks are really good at support. They're also good at damage, they're terrible at heals. The reason being is that Sorks do not have good heals. Now, again, some people may say the bird can die. Oh, well, I can heal myself. That's fine. You cannot heal other people. Well, through your classes, you have to look at your class abilities. Don't look at everything else, look at your class abilities. What heals do you have through your class? And of these heals, how useful are they? If Sorks only have the bird, then honestly, how can you say that they're good healers? That's your only heal that you give to other people? That's it? And it can be killed? That doesn't sound like a very good heal to me, just being honest with you. So that's why they're lower on the totem pole. It's also the same reason why, even though Nightblades are actually good healers, you can't put them as high as Templars, Wardens, and even Arcanists for heals. The reason being is you have to look at just the class abilities and what they offer. Nightblades have 3 skills that they can use to heal other people, and it's really strong. You have Refreshing Path, which gives out minor intellect, minor endurance, major expedition, and it heals people when they step inside the path. That's strong, that's amazing. You have Healthy Offering. It is literally the best burst heal in the game that you can give to another person. And as well, it gives you minor mending, increasing its healing done. Okay. And then finally, you have Soul Siphon, which is one of the best healing ultimates in the game. That is why when people say that when you're fighting a Nightblade, be prepared for the high burst. Whether it's damage or heals, they have the highest burst typically in the game that you're going to see. They have the highest reliability once they get everything situated to have that high burst. But that's where it ends in terms of heals that they give to other people. You have 2 heals that can burst, and you have 2 heals that also do healing over time. Soul Siphon is first a burst heal, then it's a hot, right? That's super amazing that it's capable of doing it, but when you realize that just purely through your class, you only have 2 options to heal people, and sometimes you're going to decide, I'm not going to run Healthy Offering strictly because I'd rather put another hot on. You quickly realize you're not running the Nightblade purely for, like, you're really running the Nightblade purely for a Refreshing Path. Everything else, class-wise, like, yeah, you have some passives here and there that are really nice for Nightblade. That's really it. You're very limited purely by your class in terms of heals. It's still amazing heals, but keep that in mind because compared to the Warden, the Templar, and Arcanist, which have multiple class skills for healing other people, and some of them are very strong, like they're stronger than others in a lot of regards, yeah, it's better to say like, yeah, these classes are better at healing. This class is really good at healing, but is not as great. And then the other classes like the DKs and the Sorks, not as great as healing. So now you understand how that totem pole works. By you knowing how that goes, you are allowed to then mismatch things around. You can put a Nightblade into heals. You can put a Templar into heals. But now you have to understand, alright, what are we going to be doing if we're, say, running a 4-man? If I'm running a 4-man, what classes will be best to run? Well, it really depends on what you're doing, but the easiest combo that you can do right now would be a Necromancer. Well, this current patch before the next patch that's going to be nerfing Necromancers, but this current patch, whether you're in Cyrodiil, BGs, or Imperial City, whether you're bombing or not, if you're running a 4-man, if you have a Necromancer, DPS, a Warden, a DK, and a Nightblade, you have the best of everything that you need to do in PvP. The only negative to this entire group comp is the fact that you don't have minor evasion, which, if you really wanted minor evasion, you can drop the Necro for the Arcanist. But at the same time, it's not really that necessary because the benefits that the Necro gives out this patch is very, very strong for DPS. Next patch, we'll see if they're still capable of doing high damage. I don't think they will be. I think they'll be completely thrown out of the meta for any type of damage because Stalking Blast Bones is being reworked to a worse skill. So it's basically being nerfed, plain and simple. With that being said, how does this composition work? Why is this composition really good in terms of just pure looking at the classes, right? DKs are able to give out minor brutality, which is really, really strong. They also have high flame damage. Most people are vampires in Cyrodiil. Really, everybody for PvP is vampires because it gives out the Undeath passive, which is a lot of damage mitigation. If you try to play without that damage mitigation, if you're not running literally more damage mitigation than everybody else, you are always squishier and you're always liable to die to more and more people, even if it's not flame damage. With that being said, that is why everybody's vampires, and that is why you can use that damage by then running a DK in group, having Burning Talons, Deep Breath, Shifting Standard, all these amazing skills that do high burst damage and high flame damage and high pressure to the enemy, while at the same time applying certain debuffs like Engulfing Flames or even in Kratos, because you can run that monster helm, to make him take more flame damage. This is really important because Stalking Blast Bones, this patch does flame damage. Now, again, it's this patch, it's not going to be going around next patch, but I'm just explaining how it goes for this patch. When it goes out future patches, you can easily swap it out for Arcanist and it'll be fine. You get the minor evasion. It's just not as much flame damage in the group. However, people can still activate your synergies, like for instance, the Shifting Standard synergy, which is called Shackle. It does Shackle damage. You can activate that synergy and it will deal more damage. And it's flame damage by you being on other classes that don't have a bonus for flame damage. By making them take more flame damage already and then hitting that synergy allows you to go ahead and do high burst. Either way, you have that ability, you have that capability. Really strong in the end. Moving forward though, DKs don't have any heals that are extremely exceptional. They can run Echoing Vigor, they can run Healing Orb, all that stuff, but purely just looking at the class, they're not providing an insane amount of heals. So that is going to affect the group. However, by you running a Nightblade and a Warden, which both classes have really strong heals, you're now capable of hiding the fact that DK doesn't have super basic heals. Him just having Echoing Vigor is enough because everybody else has enough hots that are actually worthwhile to ensure everybody's going to survive. With that being said, the reason why you'll have a Nightblade in group is one, they have the highest burst when it comes down to this in the game. Whether you're running a Dawnbreaker, Russia Agony Pull, things of that nature, or you're just doing an in-cap spec combo with single target damage, they have the highest burst. They can consistently pull off the highest burst while still having an insane amount of max resources and sustain. If you can't sustain on a Nightblade because you decided to go into max damage, trust me, you don't have more damage than some of these other people out here. You may think you do, but trust me, I've seen people run around with 45k health and have just as much damage as you. You know, oh, I hit a 17k, he hit a 17k too. Oh, he hit a 25k, he can hit 26k too. In terms of the damage, man, you can get basically the same type of damage while having the resources. It's a matter of knowing your class and what you're doing. I'm just bringing that out here because that is what a lot of Nightblades are going to be bringing to the table. That high health, that high sustain, that not needing to necessarily run Retro Vitality or any set for recovery, like potentially that DKs have to run. DKs don't have to run recovery sets, but they certainly need to be running lifts and things of that nature to make sure they have enough max mag and max magica, max mag and max stamina to perform the actions that they're trying to do. They have a sustain issue to a certain extent. With that being said, you don't have to worry about that at all. You don't have to worry about that at all as a Nightblade, and you'll have the high burst and sustain. Coupled with the fact that you're covering up what the DK is doing, and you have synergies as well that are helping him out. Like for instance, if you run Soul Tether, you can hit Soul Leech. By him hitting that synergy, you do more damage, get kills, things of that nature. He can ult faster. Right? You could be the running group running Rallying Cry because you don't have to worry about running sets for sustain. You can do certain things like that, and as well you give out crit chance through minor savagery, which is very strong. So in this particular scenario, you have a DK with a minor brutality, increasing weapon damage, not damage done, weapon damage. You have the crit chance increased, right? You go to the Wardens. What Wardens provide, high heals, really the best heals that you can ask for in the game consistently. They have a lot of hots. They're going to ensure that everybody is going to be well healed, and you're good. You got a good Warden healer. He's not going to let you die immediately. By all means, you're going to have to be basically instant killed for that Warden to not be able to do good heals to you and make sure you stay alive. With that being said, the Warden healers, like I said, they could be running a multitude of setups that allow them to survive. Say the Nightblade is running Rallying Cry, the Warden can run Trans, or like Rose of Transmutation, Saxiel with Ozen Inferno, right? The Warden can also run Bone Surge on their back bar, which when someone activates a synergy in group, it gives it to 6 people in group, but if you're a 4-man in this case, that just means everybody receives it, and it's a damage shield to 15% of your max health. So if you have high max health, which the Wardens are going to give you because you have minor softness, this is going to allow you to have even more heals and even more sustain, while at the same time giving you major vitality. This is very important because, and I might as well bring it out now because they're going to nerf it in a couple days. With Major Minor Vitality, and say for instance, the Warden chose not to run Transmutation, they run Sanctuary. Right? This is very important because Sanctuary grants you 10% healing received, alongside Major Minor Vitality, increasing your healing received by another 24% because it's 16 and 8% respectively for the Major and Minor. Major being bigger, Minor being minor, in case you didn't know. That is 34% increased healing received. If you're a DK and you're playing your class properly, so you have hardened armor on or coagulating blood is on, whatever of your draconic blood abilities is active and has a timer on. By you having that skill active, you increase your healing received by another 12%. This is very, very important because the 12% plus the 34, that's putting you up at a very high number. You're sitting at 46% healing received. Once you understand you have CP, so you're running around in Imperial City or Cyrodiil, you have healing received for like 2% for in your CP. You then also, by just running some heavy armor, say you run 3 pieces heavy, that's going to get you to basically 51% because you get 1% per piece of armor that you have on. You sitting out 51% healing received increase is very strong. If you don't know why that's strong, understand that healing received when you enter PvP is nerfed by 55%. That means that any heals that you receive while in PvP is immediately nerfed by 55%. Your tooltip is immediately nerfed. So you're only receiving 45% of the healing that you'll normally get. You increasing your healing receive by 51% means that you, with no debuffs applied to you, has basically negated Battle Spirit for heals. Now, if you don't think that's not wild by any means, I want you to go onto your PvP tune, right? The one that has, say, 60, 70, or even 80% healing done. Activate a heal and look at the heal when it crits. Have high weapon damage too as a DPS. You can do that, right? You're going to be seeing 27s, 30s. It's just really stupid. It's stupid numbers, right? Well, that's why. That's why Battle Spirit is there. If you're being able to heal yourself in PvE for a fucking 30k healthy off rank, or you're able to do polar winds for 26, 27, you're seeing hots tick for 7, 8, 9k, it's not even critting sometimes because of how powerful the hot is. Go to create a surge and activate that hot in PvE. You're going to be seeing stupid fucking numbers. Because in PvP, you can get that hot all the way up to 10ks and 14k ticks when you're in group. You get the right buffs, you get the right weapon damage, you get the right this and that. You're healing people for stupid fucking numbers, and it's just a hot. And it ticks every 0.3 seconds. So in a second, you can do over 40k healing. In a second. And this is in PvP land. So what do you think you're going to do in PvE land? With that being said, just by you knowing that, that's going to be allowing for a lot of combos and a lot of setups for your team to survive. Because if one hot is capable of negating somebody's spammable, or 2 hots is capable of negating somebody's spammable, because you have so much healing received on this DK, it is safe to say that you're going to be extremely tanky. You're going to need them 1-shots. You're going to need them 2-3 shots that came within 0.5 seconds of each other. So yeah, that's how a lot of people are able to stay alive and have that tankiness, because you having 51% increased healing received while the rest of your team is sitting around, say, 30-40%. Yeah, it's safe to say that you're in a really good time. You're not going to have an issue at all when it comes to surviving, because how could you? You have too much healing received to not be able to survive some of the strongest blows out there. If it doesn't instant kill you, any of the heals, burst heals, whatever going on, it's going to be able to negate a significant chunk of that, if not all of it, and then overheal you. With that being said, that's how some wardens are set up. That's how you can combo certain things together. Finally, when it comes to the necro, this is more utility based. Again, Necros, if you're running that, Stalking Blast Bone is really strong, allows for high burst because it's flame damage and it does 50% more damage based off of the distance it has to travel. Not the difference, the time that it has to travel. It's kind of wonky. All I can say is this: you throw that Blast Bones out, you can increase his damage by 50% based off of a really stupid mechanic. Sometimes it's based off of distance traveled. Other times it's based off of how long it's sat out. Like I don't care enough to really look at it. They're about to nerf it. So with that being said, you run that right now in patch, you're gonna be burning through people. Go to the Arcanist for next patch. You're getting the minor evasion, making that DK even more tanky, and the rest of your team are very tanky because now AOE skills is going to be nerfed by 10%. You can get every single one of those builds major evasion, except for the Warden. It can't get major evasion if you're running that particular setup that I was saying, where you're running Saxio and Sanctuary slash what was the other one? Transmutation. You won't be able to do it. However, you don't need to by any means. You don't have to run that setup. You can change it so that you do have capabilities of doing that. You could run, say, Phoenix Moss Thermage, which grants minor courage and minor force. Yeah, it's not as great as major force, but you get those benefits while at the same time you're running medium armor, so you get more crit heals. And it's very easy to make your crit heals really strong in this game. I'm not going to go over individual builds too much because I've kind of already done that enough. But with that being said, you can do certain things like that to make sure everybody in your group has major evasion. So that when the Arcanist grants minor evasion, you're stacking both of those AoE mitigations alongside, say, Rally or Trans, or both of them at the same time to mitigate most crit damage you're going to see in the game. That's easily pushing you past 50-60%. And in case you don't know how crit resistance work, for every 66% crit, well, every 66 crit rating that you have, crit resistance rating, you get 1% crit damage mitigation. It's additive and subtractive, so if you have 20% crit resistance, which is the base is 1,320, and someone has, say, an additional 20% crit damage. So when you go to your advanced stats and you see the crit damage there, you negate that additional 20%, so they only do the base 50% crit damage. That's typically what you want to do in most cases in PvP. You want to get their crit damage underneath or at 50% because it's manageable to survive that type of damage. It's not manageable to be surviving somebody that's hitting you for 100% plus consistently more crit damage. Because if they was able to hit you for, say, a 7k non-crit, and then they crit, that's a 14k. That's a lot of fucking damage to take. If they was able to hit you for 11k non-crit, and then they fucked around and critted on you, that's 22k. Even if you have 40k health, that's half your fucking health. Even if you have 50k health, that's almost half your fucking health right then and there from one skill. You don't want to take a risk like that, so that's why a lot of people have high crit resistance. People can easily get up to 80% crit resistance without running any ultimate. They just need to buff themselves with group, so hit Rally, hit Trans, and just have all the other sources of crit resistance. That's going to negate anybody's crit right then and there a majority of the time. They have to get group buffs in order to counteract that much crit resistance, and in the end you can still go ahead and do certain things like running running Sanctuary and all that to make sure that the healing is so strong that you're counteracting 10s, 12s, 13ks like it's nothing. So with that being said, that is explaining how you'll be doing certain group buffs and certain group benefits. I didn't really explain the Arcanist too much, simply because the Arcanist is just additional damage that you'll run in group. It's just another damage dealer. In a 4-man comp like that, that's typically what you're going to be seeing. 3 damage dealers. They may not have an insane amount of damage by themselves, or they may have an insane amount of damage by themselves. But together, they're going to combo together and provide certain buffs and utility that the whole team can use. And particularly when it comes out to Arcanist, their minor evasion is most important. And then you have good damage with their beam. So just deal damage and you're alright. You know, if you're running the Necro, you can get your ultimate back really fast, and you have Stalking Blast Bones, which synergizes with the DK's high flame damage. DKs have really high damage. You're always going to see DKs in group. By you always seeing DKs in group and they're always doing this high flame damage, it's always necessary to have one around until they nerf Vampirism, which they'll never do because If you think that there's high damage now, wait until Vampirism is gone, or wait till Undeath is reworked and you don't get that damage mitigation. Everybody's going to be extremely fucking squishy. Everybody's going to be seeing a stupid amount of numbers. So yeah, they're not going to do that anytime soon. If you're talking about 6-mans and 8-mans and what you'll run for that, you already understand a good chunk of it based off of that, just as 4-man. But I can explain to you why you wouldn't want to run certain combos. Right? That's a really good combo to run. Here's a really bad combo to run. If you have a Sorcerer, a Templar, both of these are DPS, and then you finally have, say, a DK for heals, and then you have a, oh no, say, Warden for DPS, right? That'll be a really good example of a bad combo setup. Because Sorks have high damage, but they can't heal themselves very well, and they can't heal others well. So that's affecting overall survivability in the group, because that one person cannot heal well. Templars and Wardens can heal well, but they're on DPS, so they're not going to be healing as much, but they have that capability of still pulling out good burst heals. Well, the Templar can do it. The Warden not so much, because if they're a DPS Warden, they're probably running Arctic Blast, and Arctic Blast does not heal other people. Even if they're running Polar Wind, right, as a DPS, they have to run a lot of health in order to do that. So they have to make a very particular setup in order to function with the group properly for that, and they're going to be missing out on some offensive capabilities because of it. Templars, if they was to fight, say, that 4-man group we was talking about earlier with the DKs and such, they're not going to be capable of actually defending themselves well against that. Reason being is, if they're going to be swinging at, say, the Arcanist, that motherfucker has major minor evasion. You're not going to do shit to him, because your jabs, which is your main spammable for the Templars, does AoE damage, and it has a very, very low tooltip. So you're going to be hitting in the hundreds, not thousands, hundreds. Say it's 900 each time. That's only 3k from a spammable. People's hots heal for 3k. So you do with that information as you will about the likelihood of a, Templar running into a 4-man group that's just as confident as them and being able to beat them. Yes, Radiant Impression is good. Yes, you can run other skills that are single target focused and try to get kills. But typically it's not going to be enough. Versus DKs, Nightblades, they all have high bursts, whether it's single target or AoE, and can still burn through damage. With that being said, when it comes to the pure class bonuses, you get very similar things from it. The Sorcerers play the role of the Nightblade with the high burst and granting crit chance. It's just that they don't have the sustainability as a blade. They don't have the heals as a blade. They have, in theory, higher damage, but can't sustain it because they have bad heals. So because of that, the only benefit the Sorc really provides is negate. And if they're negating, you might as well not have them as a DPS, have them as support. But even if they're support, they're still one of the squishiest people out there. They're still the most liable person to die. So they have to either constantly streak away from the fight and stay away from the team, leaving the teammates exposed to taking high amounts of damage because there's only 3 of you to focus instead of 4, or die. And that's not exactly really great. So, with that being said, Sorcs are always going to be taken out of the picture in group fights because of that. Going into the Templar, they're taken out of the fight purely off of damage. They can't do enough damage with the spammables, so typically they're not going to do anything significant. If they run Wrecking Blow or Dizzy Swing or even running slashes and stuff, they can kind of get some decent damage out there. But even then, it's still not going to be enough to counteract the fact that it's not capable of doing any significant AoE damage outside of ulting. And even then, unless you're ulting literally every 5 seconds, you're not going to do anything. And as much as some people like to say they're doing that, they're not doing it. Just be honest with yourself, you're probably not doing that at all. So, again, Templars taken out of the picture because of damage. DKs, for this scenario, having them as a heal, they're not good at healing other people. So you just wasted a whole fucking choice because of that. That's 2 classes in your 4-man that can't heal well, that you're running with. That means that the Templar and Warden that are on DPS and not heals, so the opposite of what their class is best at doing in PvP, have to both do high damage and heals, and the Templar's already taken out of the picture for damage. So in this point, the only person you can rely on is the Warden for damage. And unfortunately, the Warden's is the poor man's DK. Why do I say that the poor man's DK? Because people like to say, well, my Deep Fissure hits these high hits, they do this, they do that. Yes, it can do that high damage. Deep Fissure is one of the best skills that you could run for a Warden. But that's about it. You're running the Warden for a Deep Fissure. You could just run a Deep Breath and do more damage more consistently. If you don't believe me, just think about it for a second, right? DKs can increase their flame damage, all this jazz, right? They can do all this stuff to do high amounts of damage very, very, very quickly. Wardens have a lot of stats for both damage done and crit damage. DKs only really have the flame damage to get them high damage. In theory, Wardens should be hitting harder consistently. But when you get into practice, the amount of times those Deep Fissures misses, the amount of times that you be running around trying to get these high bursts in and you realize, oh fuck, I have to wait 9 seconds for my burst to come back, versus I just go to my DK, hit Deep Breath, and then it blows up in 3 seconds. You can combo 3 seconds very easily. You don't even need to run Deep Breath. I've seen plenty of people go out and run bombs and they're not running Deep Breath. Even though Deep Breath is still one of the better things to run. Hell, you can run the less damaging version of Deep Breath. You can run Draw Essence for a sustain back. Get Magicka back from hitting it. Every time you hit a target, you get 20% of the Magicka cost of it back. Of the skill cost. Like, do you see how that goes? Like, come on now. Be realistic, man. Wardens is just simply the poor man's DK in terms of damage consistently. So, at that point, if you're just a poor man, what's the point? You're outclassed in every single way. The Warden is the best one set up to do all that's needed for the group, and even then, they're still weaker than just the DK in terms of pure damage. And as much as I like to say they'll be able to catch up to them, unless you're making a whole setup to work around that Warden's DPS, you're really just wasting your time. You're wasting your time so badly. So at the end of the day, that's how certain combos are set up. That's how you avoid certain situations. Because if you understand how much your group has in terms of damage, it's somewhat of a sliding scale. You understand how much your group has in terms of healing, it is again also a sliding scale. And then in terms of utility, it's not so much a sliding scale, but definitely like you can also kind of visualize it somewhat as a scale, or there's certain things that you want to have. The more of you have of it, the better usually. You don't really receive diminishing returns in high-end PvP until the very end. You can have too much utility, you can have too much healing, and you can have too much damage. But by the time that you receive too much damage, too much healing, too much utility, you've already bursted through basically 90%, if not 99% of whoever you're fighting. Realistically, if you have all three, too much sustain, too much damage, too much utility, too much healing, you're going to get nerfed. That comp is going to get nerfed. And trust me, they're starting to nerf some group comps. There's a reason why the major amount of vitality that I spoke over earlier in this video is going to be nerfed. They're changing how it works. They're nerfing healing received overall because people were having too much healing received. And they also nerfed reduced healing received because some people were throwing out 57% reduced healing as if everybody's running around increasing their healing received by even 50% or even 20%. Some people wasn't even increasing it by 10%, and you reduced it by 57%. Hell, I've seen motherfuckers fuck around on accident and reduce their healing received by 75% because they was trying to do what the other guy was doing. And now, they can't heal for shit. Because it doesn't matter what your healing done is, your healing received matters a lot. If you cannot receive more than 25% of your healing, you're screwed. Just telling you, man, you're screwed. You only have 45% of that base healing, and it was reduced by 75%. Yeah, you're fucked. You're fucked at that point. With that being said, there's not much else to really go over when it comes down to group play and anything else you need to really know. Everything else is more specific, as in like, oh, okay, so what would the Sork support run for this, or what would the Nightblade bomb run for this, or what would the Nightblade healer run for this? What's the skills? What's the CP? All that is just more finer details. But overall, when it comes down to group play and compositions of the builds, you hopefully understand enough so that whenever you're fighting other groups or you're trying to come up with your own group, you can understand like, okay, this is a very good start to get me into endgame PvP, get my friends into endgame PvP, and we can finally leave fucking Bruma and don't have to quest there. We can just fight people. We don't have to wait until the Zerg says they're pushing Chalman or pushing Alessia or pushing Ash. I can just go there with my 12 man or my 6 man and we can do something when there's people around. We don't have to go to a dead campaign to emp. We can emp in Grey Host. We can emp during Mid-Year Mayhem and not have an issue about how much gold we have in our pockets to pay the other motherfuckers to get us there. We don't have to do any of that. We can just go in there by ourselves and dominate whoever we fight. Either it's going to be a good fight or it's going to be a good fight. GG. You died in 2 seconds. That's it. With that being said, my name is acelewy. I'll holler at y'all later. Peace.